Mm, all right, there we go. Okay, welcome to Raising Strong-Willed Kids Summit. My name is Andrea Milioti, and I'm your host. And today's guest is Carmon Hinton. And Carmon is a tireless advocate for the rights of children with ADHD. She has over 14 years of experience working with children and adults with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, multiple handicaps, oppositional defiant disorder, and cognitive delays, just to name a few. She has served as a special education liaison for an urban K through 8 kindergarten through 8 school and performed over leadership roles K through 12 education. She is a licensed educator, holds a reading endorsement, and also holds a license in educational leadership. Aside from her professional experience, Carmon is a proud parent of a son with ADHD. She works it and she lives it. Welcome, Carmon.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's start off. So what got you into this?
Well, I started off working for a county board of developmental disabilities in Ohio,
Right.
which is where I'm from.
Right.
And I began working with adults. So I worked with adults with a wide range of disabilities. And then I decided, I wanted to start working with children who had special needs. Exactly. So I went back to get my master's. Unbeknownst to me, my son was going to be diagnosed, and which he was at the age of 3 with ADHD, ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder. And then at the age of 6, he was diagnosed with anxiety as well. And so I was already an educator working with children at this time, and I loved it, but I really found that there were a lot of challenges in being the parent of a child who had these disabilities, even though I was working in the school district. And so I decided that if I was being treated the way I was by certain people in the school district, then what were other parents facing who did not have the knowledge or the background of what their rights were? So I decided that not only would I advocate for my son, but I would advocate for other children as well, like him.
That's awesome. I feel like he was diagnosed with ADHD at 3.
Yep.
Really, and
very early.
Yeah, because now I think now they are, but he's what? Well, he's 13. All right. Well, he's 13, so he's. I mean, I think basically when they started, it could be because my son, who is like close to your daughter's age, right? Is 21. He like they went. Like, I want to get him evaluated at when he was like 5. He was in kindergarten, and they wouldn't. They said you need to wait till like 2nd or 3rd grade. And I was like, no, by 2nd grade when he was 7. And I wrote a letter because his teacher saw it as well. So
yes, I mean, he was in pre-K. I remember taking him to the doctor, and always called my son Curious George because he reminded me. So he was just into everything. I don't care how high you put it up. He was going for it. How low it was, he was going under to find it. He was just like pew, 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 pew everywhere. Okay.
Exactly.
So we're at the doctor's office this day, and the doctor was so calm about it. But my son's climbing the cabinets in the doctor's office, like blowing up the balloons, blowing up the gloves like balloons, and he just was all over the place today.
That was my son.
The doctor calmly said, would you like a referral to behavioral health? And I was like, what? I was kind of offended at first. I was like, why? Because everybody always said, well, he's just a boy. Even though I had concerns and I saw things, I had raised a daughter. I had no experience with a son. He was my first experience with a boy. So I was listening to other people say, well, he's just being a boy. And I'm like, okay, well, he's just being a boy, but there was more to it. He also had some sensory processing issues. So he would not he never wanted to wear clothes. So he was constantly naked in the
Oh,
house.
that
But
sounds familiar too.
in Cleveland, Ohio, we have winters and it's very cold. And, during that time, he was not able or didn't want like the way pants felt in long sleeve shirts. And so that kind of raised a flag for me. And I was like, well, what's going on? Never wants to wear socks. He doesn't want to wear long clothing. And then there were other things like certain noises, like flushing the toilet or in echoey spaces with vaulted ceilings. He struggled with those
Mhm.
sounds as well. So, those were things that as we started working with behavioral health, that I'm like, okay, these are some things that are going on and we need to figure out, how to help him through that. So
Exactly. I agree. It's crazy. Now, what do parents need to know to help them gain a better understanding of why their child may have a difficult time at home and show challenging behaviors?
well, one thing that I want parents to really know is that behavior is a form of communication. A lot of the times, that's the only way our children know how to get out what they're dealing with is through frustration. They're not able to communicate their needs like we are. And like I know, there are still adults who still have a difficult time
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
um, communicating how they're feeling or recognizing that something is going on, or
Right.
not being comfortable talking about it. So our children have this same issue as well. And so we have to be really patient
Mhm.
and find ways that are best for our kid to communicate. So it's not going to look the same for every single child. Some children might need visual models. Some children might like writing. I had one student who really preferred to write things down versus verbalizing it. And
Mhm.
so if we take the time and try to figure out what their method of communication is and teach them those skills to recognize when they're feeling a way, then we will have a better time with our children as far as communicating and teaching them what they need to be able to communicate their needs.
Like, see, kind of recognizing what they're after, what their style of communication is.
Absolutely. And a lot of times it's completely opposite from ours. So I even talked to, other teachers and parents about learning styles. Communication styles are maybe different as well, but even learning styles. So if you're having challenges with, your kid and helping them with homework, a lot of the times we're trying to teach our child the way we learn, and it's not
Mhm.
necessarily the way they learn. So everybody gets frustrated. And I know I've been there before. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's 9 o'clock at night. I'm off work. I cooked dinner and now here we are doing this homework and I'm tired and it's past your bedtime and I still got to walk the dog. And, we have all these things as parents that we're trying to juggle. And so we get frustrated, and then our children may not be focused at the time. So especially if they have the part of ADHD now is under one umbrella, but
Yeah.
there are different types, so one child may lack some of the focus, or another child might be hyper, another child might have the combined type. So
Because we
we
have three types of ADHD. So
yeah. So just recognizing, those areas, what learning styles your kid has versus your own, and communication styles.
awesome. No, I agree. How can parents create structure at home for a child, like to create the home structure?
So I always feel that the earlier you do this, the better. A lot of times for younger kids, it's visual models. And so and I like this because this is something that you can do together. You can find pictures and cut them out and, say, okay, say the child really struggles with morning routines,
Right.
so
Right.
creating routines for them and letting them take part in creating their visual schedule and putting it on the refrigerator or in a common area in the house, and letting them. So with my son, I would have him a do now section or a finished section. So if we came in the house and it was TV time or I'm cooking dinner, I would let him take a break. Then when I said, okay, it's time to transition to eating dinner or to homework, he would go to the refrigerator and move the TV over to finish. And now homework was moved up. So in the beginning, it was like, oh, I don't know, no, I just want to watch TV. Or, kids get fixated on a preferred activity. So whatever it is that they love doing, they don't want to give it up.
It's like my son on the computer. Oh my God.
Yeah, and some kids with video games.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree.
He's hyper focused on that. He does woof, doesn't even.
But the more we did it, and if you're going to do this, you have to be consistent. Every day got easier to the point where he was asking, can I go move my chart? And I'm like, wait, it's not time yet. He was asking, he was excited about it, and he just got it like that. Now, one thing I will say, one mistake that I made is that once he grasped all of it, he was doing it on his own. I stopped it because I was like, oh, he has it. But then he ended up going backwards and some of the same behaviors start to happen again. So if you find that happening, if you notice that your child using their schedule so well that you don't feel like they need it anymore, and you decide to kind of wean them off of it, that's fine. But then once you see if they start to digress or behavior starting to come back, then you want to implement it again. So that's one thing that I suggest. The other thing is, creating some rewards, some rules for the house. So rewarding them for the positive behaviors that you want to see. That will eliminate or start to decrease some of the negative behaviors that you don't want to see. So if you give more attention to the positive things that they're doing, because our kids want to please us, they want to make us happy. So if we're paying more attention to those positive behaviors, and I'm not saying ignore it, because they know how to get under our skin and they know just exactly how to trigger us and things like that. So you can't just turn a cheek every time they don't do something right. That's not what I'm saying. But when they do, and this works really good when you have siblings as well. Because if the other sibling is modeling something, you can say, oh, Julie, I really like the way you're, sitting in your seat and not throwing your peas across the room, then the other one's going to be looking like, well, I can sit in my seat and not throw my peas across the room too. I want mommy to notice me, So those are techniques that I've used on my own son, as well as, in the classroom. It looks a little different in the classroom, but it does work.
Yeah, that's true. Like you said, like the first one, when we talked about like visual, making it visual and interactive. What do you think about even when they're doing homework or doing chores? Because, a lot of times the kid, they don't have that concept of time going by. And a time, they always talk about that thing is called a time timer. It's a visual aspect of just seeing the time move.
Yes. And so that takes me into transitioning, because I do see kids do a lot better when they have a use of a timer or a clock in front of them or something like that. I used to use an oven timer for my son, and then as he got older and was able to tell time, then I could use like a clock or something like that, a digital clock. You can use your cell phone.
Yeah, you can put
on your cell phone, as well as what was I going to mention?
There's a cell phone too. There's an app on now. I know the iPhone. I have the iPhone. You got the iPhone too, because you wouldn't be on Clubhouse if you didn't. So, it has a visual app on the phone where it's not just a timer. It's actually visual, so they can see it, which is good.
And then verbal reminders as well. Some children, even with the timer, will still feel kind of slighted, so the timer will go off and it starts beeping and they're like, well, wait a minute. So they had really not, if they're really into whatever they're working on, they're not looking up at the timer as much, and the timer goes off, they're like, well, wait, I wasn't ready. So a lot of things that worked for my son, and this was something that when he was going to occupational therapy and counseling, they would give the verbal reminders as well. So, okay, we have 3 more minutes. Okay, 2 more minutes, 1 more minute. So that way it's preparing them that the timer is getting ready to go off.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. That makes sense because otherwise it goes and they're like, oh my God, and they're frustrated. So they have no need because they kept hearing it go down.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Um, what can a parent do to help their child with transitions?
So that was another, so that's what I was just talking about. Definitely
That,
using a timer or something
right.
visual to
Yeah.
alert their child. Even having conversations beforehand. Okay, we're getting ready to start this. When we start this, reviewing, well, what do we do next? How do we, clean up our toys when we're done? What happens if you don't feel ready? How can you tell mommy or communicator? What can we do? And what are your, because kids like to know that they have
They
options
want
as well.
right, knowing ahead of time, something like I
Yep.
remember a big thing what I did with my son. And it was a big thing when he'd act up in stores. Like we go to the supermarket, I was like, so to get him, like I would like, I had to prepare. I said, you know what, we're gonna go to the store, but what do we have to do? And I let him know, we're gonna go, you can help mommy, we're gonna pick out food from the supermarket. And then, and I'd be like, you know what, after we get all that and we get the food home, you pick something, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
Preparing him and then at the same time making him I said, okay, you were so good. And we did this because mommy needed to do that. We needed to get food. But now, you pick something. Well, like mommy can do something with you. What
Mm-hmm.
can you know?
Yes, you could use first and then charts too, or boards. It's just a first side and a then, so first we'll do this, then you get to do this. The other thing that parents can use are choice boards, which work fabulously for children. So they get an option. So even though this is one thing mommy wants you to do, here's a choice of other things. And it almost looks like a tic-tac-toe board or so that you could choose from. And some of the things on there could be some of their preferred activities, and then mix them with activities that you would enjoy that they or prefer that they do or would like to do with them together, and start letting them choose. And then you scratch that off. And then the next choice, they'll have to pick something else. So those always go over well with transitioning too.
That's awesome. You know what I wanted to ask you also, what do you think? Because I know a lot of parents always say, you know what, my kid's so emotional. Like, the emotion. And I was wondering, is that emotion like that is like tied to ADHD? Is that like a sensory processing or?
I
'Cause
believe it
like,
is tied to ADHD. And the reason why is because a lot of children diagnosed with ADHD struggle in areas of executive functioning. And those are the areas that help us process those emotions. So you may see that, sorry.
no,
Can
that's
you see
okay.
me? Can you see
And now
me?
I see you.
Okay, a
Now
call
I
came
got
through.
you. It's
Okay,
okay.
so you may see that,
Technology.
yeah, you may wonder like, okay, my kid is 9, 10 years old, but seems kind of immature in some areas, or it seems like they're very emotional. So all of that does have to do with executive functioning. So it may take them a little bit longer than it would typically developing children.
Yeah, that makes sense because I know a lot, it's like the kids, they have like over it and it's that, I think it's that emotional regulation because
Mm-hmm.
they can't regulate exactly how they're feeling.
Yes.
What do you think about, do you ever use like with the littlest kids probably that can emotion cards to try and get them, like we have like the computer, it's kind of like the emojis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The feelings,
Cards,
we use
making
feelings charts. So those work really well, especially in the beginning of the day, the morning, how are you feeling? Or when they come home from school, letting them point out how they're feeling instead of trying to verbalize it. Because a lot of times our kids will just be like, fine or okay, and it's not fine and okay. But they just don't know how to express what it is. So using those charts, the faces, and even some social stories to kind of talk about characters or other children who feel like this and what they do and how they deal with it. Those are very helpful as well.
That's good. Those are really good pointers. Thank you. Thanks,
You're
Carmen.
welcome.
What would you want everybody to take from today? What would you want somebody's like the biggest takeaway that parents should take from today?
Definitely that you're not alone. I feel like a lot of times we feel like we're on an island of our own. Nobody understands. And in some cases that is the case as far as, immediate family. They may not understand. We get accused of not disciplining enough. We get
Mm-hmm.
accused of spoiling them, all kinds of things, and
Yeah.
I just want parents to know it's not you. It is not. Don't feel like you're on an island on your own. Your child is capable and can and will learn the skills that they need to be productive citizens. And it just may take them a different route of getting there. So if you are consistent, if you're teaching them these skills, if you're trying to learn how they communicate and meet in the middle and try to improve communication, you're learning and doing a dive in, because it takes work, doing a dive in what their behaviors are, which ones need immediate attention, how many times is it happening. I tell parents all the time, track behaviors, because it's good information for the doctors, the counselors, the teachers, and it also gives you an understanding of what it is that is happening, when it is happening, what's triggering it, and that'll help you come up with a plan at home.
Makes sense. That's awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Carmen. It's really good advice. All right. So if people want to find you, they can email you to info at
Yes. Info at
Coaching with Rice.
coachingwithrise.com. I can be found on Instagram at Coaching with Rise, and the Facebook, you can find me at Coaching with Rise as well. And my website is www.coachingwithrise.com.
Awesome. I love that. Awesome. So that's good. And so that's awesome. And thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. And thanks for having me again.
Exactly. Thank you.